The Last Dog on Earth, Chapter 2. The Wallace's summer kickoff barbecue was even worse than Logan had expected. Fortunately, nobody in the backyard even really noticed that he was there. The adults were all standing in little clusters by the pool, slurping beer and laughing. Devon Wallace was bullying every single kid into playing ping pong with him, even the 8-year-olds. Robert sat on a folding lawn chair next to the gas grill while Mr. Wallace was flipping burgers in an apron and a white chef's hat. Judging from the way Robert was looking at Mr. Wallace, you'd think the guy had just discovered the cure for cancer. Logan wasn't surprised. It was all part of Robert's act. He had this annoying habit of pretending to be interested in whatever Mr. Wallace had to say, no matter how boring it was. Mr. Wallace could be talking about cleaning his pool or some other garbage that would make most normal people want to take a nap, but Robert would just sit there with his look on his face. And Logan couldn't help wondering if he'd spent hours in the mirror practicing it, the concerned look, the serious look. Eyes focused, forehead wrinkled, as if to say, "Oh yes, I completely understand why cleaning your pool is such an important subject, and I have some important opinions of my own." "Then speak up," Logan always wanted to tell him. "We're all very curious." It was obvious why Robert tried so hard. Mr. Willis had everything Robert wanted. A lot of money, a big house, a swimming pool, and a perfect son. So Robert probably figured that if he listened carefully enough, or at least pretended to listen, he discovered the key to getting all those things for himself. It was pretty sad if you really thought about it. Well, actually, it wasn't that sad, because it was sort of funny in a way. Excuse me. The thing was, Robert would always get bored with Mr. Wallace after about 5 minutes and start stuffing his face with food. Then he'd get bored with that. Back and forth, back and forth. That was the general pattern of the summer kickoff barbecue. Mostly, Logan just stood off to the side and watched Robert at work. Watched Robert at work, pigging out phony baloney, pigging out phony baloney. I thought Outward Bound was for troublemakers, Robert was saying. He grabbed an open bag of potato chips from the table beside him and started stuffing them into his mouth. Mr. Wallace shook his head. "Not at all. It teaches valuable life skills. Teamwork, survival, self-motivation," he laughed. "Not like Devon needs to learn that kind of thing. I'm sure he'll be running the whole program by the end of it." "Going was all Devon's idea?" Robert asked. "Yes, it was," Mr. Wallace said proudly. He stopped flipping burgers for a moment and glanced at Robert. "You know, you might want to think about something like that, like Outward Bound for Logan." Robert grimaced. "We have thought about it," he said. "Actually, Logan's guidance counselor recommended one of those special boot camps, for troubled kids." Uh-oh. As quickly as he could, Logan ducked behind some bushes at the edge of the patio. He didn't want to hear anything more about his guidance counselor, Mr. Powell. During the past year, the school had made him have sessions with Mr. Powell twice a week. Mr. Powell would sit there and try to get Logan to explain why he cut school so often, and didn't make any effort in his classes. And Logan would sit there and not answer. Wasn't it obvious? "Boot camp would be perfect for a non-verbal type like you," Mr. Powell told him. A non-verbal type. Logan couldn't believe people actually talked like that. "It's not like I'm non-verbal," he almost said. "It's just that I have nothing to say to you." Whatever, school was out for the summer. He wouldn't have to see Mr. Powell again until September. Besides, right now he had more important things to worry about, like testing Logan Moore Master Remote Control. He bent down and slung his backpack off his shoulders, then gingerly removed the LMORCA. A smile spread across his face. Even if the thing didn't work, at least it looked cool. It was heavy and black, about the size of a shoebox, with two long silver antennas sticking out from the very front of it, in a V shape, like an insect's head. Come to think of it, the big dial in the middle of it sort of looked like a nose, and the big red button could be a pimple, or a wart. Yeah, in fact, the whole device looked like it could be like the face of some freakish prehistoric bug, then like some souped up remote control, which made sense in a way. There was an electronic brain inside, a brain with telepathic powers. If it worked. But Logan was pretty sure. Something brushed up against his leg. He swiveled around and found himself nose to nose with a chocolate-brown Labrador. Otis. Logan frowned. The dog was panting. Logan could smell his breath. It wasn't very pleasant. "Shoo, boy," Logan whispered. He stood up straight. "Go on, shoo, get out of here." "Hey, Logan, what are you doing?" Logan's shoulders sagged. It was just his luck. Devon Wallace was coming his way. Devon was all sweaty from ping pong, but every blonde hair was still perfectly in place. He sneered at the LMRC. "What you got there?" he asked. "Nothing," Logan mumbled. He was beginning to wish he'd never opened his backpack. Otis's tail started wagging. "What is it, some kind of remote control?" Devon asked. "Something like that," Logan said. "I was just... Here, let me see it." Devon interrupted. He snatched the LMRC from Logan's grasp. "What's it supposed to do?" He pushed the red button and flicked the dial. "Nothing," Logan said. Devon shoved the LMRC back into Logan's hands. "I bet I could whip your butt in ping pong," he said. Logan shrugged. "I'm sure you could. You want to play me?" "Not really." "Come on," Devon said. He grinned. "I've whipped everybody else's butt. You're the only one else who hasn't played me." Otis started licking one of Devon's sweaty legs. His big tongue made a slurping sound. "I don't really like ping pong," said Logan. "Probably because you stink at it," Devon said. "Probably," Logan agreed. He thought for a minute. "Actually, I'd say definitely. That's definitely why I don't want to play it. That's definitely why I don't like it." "So you really don't want to play me?" Devon asked. He sounded annoyed. "What's the point?" Logan said. I feel like that'd be Logan asked. What's the point is a question. But whatever. "We both know you're going to whip me. We both know that you're going to win, right? Here, I'll tell you what. Let's tell people that we just played and you creamed me. How's that? You can tell everyone here that I didn't even score a single point. I'll go along with whatever you say." For what seemed like a long time, Devon just stared at Logan, as if he'd answered in Swahili. Then he stalked off. "Weirdo," he muttered under his breath. Logan almost laughed. Guys like Devon never knew what to do with anyone who didn't accept some dumb challenge. They counted on you being just like them, needing to win. They needed to humiliate you in public, even if the whole world knew that you stank. Winning was the only thing that counted. That was weird. On the other hand, Logan could guess why Devon felt like he had to win all the time. His parents never shut up about how great he was at sports and pretty much everything else. So he probably felt like he had some sort of obligation to whip everybody, as if he had to keep living up to what his parents said. You sort of had to feel sorry for him. Sort of. Logan scanned the backyard for something he could test the LMRC on. There was nothing on the lawn but the ping pong table. Just Devon looking sulky. Nothing by the pool, just a bunch of dumb kids splashing around. Nothing by the grill. Aha! The stereo. It was perched on the patio wall, right by the sliding glass doors that led to the kitchen. A slender black remote lay beside it. The radio was still turned to that cheesy adult rock station. As quietly as he could, Logan crept across the back of the patio, bending low so Robert and Mr. Wallace wouldn't notice him, and zeroed in on a row of potted plants about 10 feet from the stereo. He tiptoed the last few steps and crouched behind the leaves, potting them with the antenna. Then he flicked the dial to S for stereo and pressed the red button. Nothing happened. He pressed it once more. Still nothing. Okay. He reminded himself not to be too discouraged. There were bound to be a few kinks in any invention. Take his last masterpiece. God damn. What's with these abbreviations? The LMSPWW, the Logan Moore Super Powerful Weed Whacker. It had had to be modified several times before it did what it was supposed to do. In fact, he'd been forced to take it apart in the entire motor and rebuild it twice before he got it right. Anyway, the Wallace's stereo might use some kind of special frequency. Just for kicks, he flicked the dial to GDO, the garage door opener, and pressed the button a third time. The music stopped. It works! Logan bit his lip to keep from saying the words aloud. Mr. Wallace and Robert frowned at the stereo. Logan pressed the button again. The music kicked back in. Mr. Wallace and Robert exchanged a puzzled glance. They both shrugged and turned back to the grill. Logan grinned. Now he was getting somewhere. Still, it was one thing to turn the stereo on and off. It was another to actually control it. He flipped a switch marked volume, then gave the dial below it a twist. A piercing, high-pitched whistle exploded from the speakers. Logan flinched. Yikes, that was really loud. It sounded like a fire alarm. Mr. Wallace dropped his spatula. He clamped his hands over his ears and scowled at Robert. Robert clamped his hands over his ears too. Otis barked. His ears stiffened. "What's going on?" Mr. Wallace shouted. Robert shook his head. Otis was barking wildly now. Logan twisted the volume knob on the LMRC back to 0. The speakers cracked a little, but that was it. Not good. Everyone was holding their hands over their ears and making faces at the stereo. The cheeks were all scrunched up like dried fruit. Come on. It'd be like, come on. Logan muttered. He jabbed at the red button. Nothing happened. Otis's bark turned into a howl. Ow! He started chasing his tail, running in tight, crazy circles on the lawn. Turn it off! Devon yelled from across the yard. Mr. Wallace strode towards the stereo, hands still tight over his ears. At the same moment, Otis came out of his circle and started for the patio. He barreled straight into Mr. Wallace's legs. Mr. Wallace stumbled and crashed to the lawn, his chef hat falling off of his head. Ow! Otis howled. Logan giggled. He knew he shouldn't, but he couldn't help it. Otis lunged at the stereo. Logan's jaw dropped. The dog's brown body hurled through the air and slammed right into the CD player, knocking it off the patio wall. The big silver box bounced on the flagstones with a metallic thud. The speaker cables jerked. Logan winced, squeezing his eyes shut. Please don't break. Please don't. The whistling stopped. Logan opened his eyes. The backyard fell silent. Well, almost. Otis still hadn't calmed down. In fact, he seemed to have worked himself up into a brand new frenzy, racing across the yard and snorting. Mr. Wallace sat down on the lawn, looking dazed. All right, everybody stay calm, Devon yelled. He ran alongside the pool. I'll handle the dog. He waved his arms. Bad dog, heel. Boy. Heel. Otis bolted straight for him. Devon dropped to one knee at the pool's edge and pointed to the ground. I said heel, he growled. Right now. Otis didn't even slow down. He crashed into Devon and pushed him off balance. For a moment, Devon teetered over the clear blue water. Then he toppled in. Splash. Everybody gasped. Logan burst out laughing. Otis looked pleased with himself as if he had just pulled off a really neat trick, even neater than fetching his own leash. He kept right on running around and around the pool. His tail wagged. Devon's hair looked like a stringy blonde mop. It hung to his face and dripped on to his drenched clothes as he hauled himself out of the water. Logan, what are you doing? Uh-oh. Robert had spotted him behind the plants. What do you have there? Robert demanded, his face reddening. It's, that remote control thingy I was telling you about, Logan said. He stood up and glanced at Mr. Wallace. Now he felt bad. The poor guy was hunched over the fallen CD player, examining it very carefully, the way a doctor would examine a patient. There was a grass stain on the seat of his kayak shorts. You did this, Robert sputtered. Didn't you? Answer me. I think I did, Logan admitted. He stepped around from behind the plants and cleared his throat. Sorry. Mr. Wallace lifted the CD player and set it back on the patio wall. He forced a strange smile. That's okay, Logan, he said. I'm sure you didn't blow my CD... Fuck. I'm sure you didn't blow my stereo speakers on purpose. He emphasized the last two words, as if to tell Logan he didn't really mean what he was saying. If anything's broken, I'll pay for it, Logan said. Pay for it? Robert asked. With what? When you said you'll pay for it, you really mean I'll pay for it. You think this is funny, don't you? Logan didn't answer. His face was hot. Everybody was staring at him. You know, I think it's okay, Mr. Wallace said. Now he sounded embarrassed. The speaker cables just got ripped out. Really, Robert, it's not that big of a deal. They make those stereos withstand a lot of abuse. Can I take a look at it? Logan offered. If it's broken, maybe I could fix it. Don't you think you've done enough damage for one day? Robert asked. He planted himself between Logan and Mr. Wallace and folded his arms across his chest. If you think I'm going to let you get within 5 feet of Mr. Wallace's stereo, think again. But I didn't mean to break it, Logan argued. I'm just trying to help. Help? Robert sniffed. That's a first. Logan's jaw tightened. His eyes darted around the backyard, searching for his mother. Why was Robert even getting involved? A, it was an accident, and B, it was none of his business. If this was a real problem, Mom should be getting involved, not Robert. Logan was her son. Besides, she knew that if Logan said he wanted to help, he meant it. But Mom was nowhere to be seen. Logan shook his head. She'd probably slunk inside the Wallace's house as soon as Robert started ranting. That was classic Mom. Rolling and high when things started to get ugly. It was classic all around. The whole sequence of events really couldn't get any more classic. Just forget about it, huh? Mr. Wallace suggested. He picked his chef's hat up and the spatula off the ground, then walked back over to the grill. Looks like these burgers are almost ready. Anyway, it's chow time. He wiped the spatula on his apron. Robert shook his head. He turned his back on Logan. Now I've got to change, Devon yelled, to nobody in particular. He marched toward the house, his wet sneakers squelching on the cement. This is great. Just great. Otis trailed after him. He finally seemed to have calmed down. As Devon walked past him, Logan cleared his throat. Sorry. Devon shot him a venomous glance, then slammed the door behind him. Otis jumped backward as the metal screening nearly hit him on the nose. I don't know what its problem is, Robert said to Mr. Wallace. That kid's got serious issues. He starts trouble wherever he goes. That kid. Logan repeated the words to himself. The kid. Not Logan. Not his name. Not as if he weren't standing right behind Robert. Not as if he couldn't hear every single thing Robert was saying. No. That kid. Mr. Wallace shrugged. He dished a couple of burgers onto a plate. Otis trotted over and sat beside him, panting and staring intently at the meat. It's his father, Robert continued. That's where he gets it. Now Logan almost felt like laughing. What could his father possibly have done? Possibly have to do with what he was like. What could his father have to do with anything at all? Logan barely even knew the guy. Robert truly was a moron. He never failed to outstupid himself. Maybe you should think about getting Logan a dog, Mr. Wallace said. He reached down and scratched Otis behind the ears. I tell you, training Otis really taught Devon the value of discipline and responsibility. Logan had heard just about enough. He turned and trudged around the house to the car. He'd just wait here until it was time to go. If Robert believed that the key to solving all of Logan's problems was to turn him into the next Devon Wallace, then that was fine. Logan just didn't want to be around to listen to it, which, in a way, was the main reason he hadn't wanted to come to the summer kickoff barbecue in the first place. Email exchange between Sheriff Van Wyck and Dr. Harold Marks, Chief of the Portland University Research Center for Infectious Diseases. I'm not going to read the whole header. Date is June 28th. Subject, a dog disease. Dear Dr. Marks, my name is John Van Wyck. That's such a stupid name. I'm the sheriff of Redmond, a small town about 100 miles south of Portland. Your name came up in our database as somebody who might know about a disease that's been infecting the dogs all in and around our area. The symptoms are like rabies, but they also include loss of body control and sleepiness. Dr. Claudia Horace, a local veterinarian, autopsied 2 of the dogs, but the results were inconclusive. I have asked her to forward her notes to you in hopes that you'll find something she missed. A local dog trainer has been stirring up a fuss by shooting these dogs, and we want to put an end to the shootings if we can. Any help you could give us would be greatly appreciated. Also, the database came back with Dr. Craig Wesley, but he doesn't seem to be listed in your university's current directory. Has he moved to another university? Please let us know. Thanks. And then there's a forward from Dr. Marks. June 20th, subject read, a dog disease. Mr. Van Wyck, thanks for getting in touch with me. It's important that we learn about outbreaks such as this one, and I appreciate you contacting us. I looked into it immediately. I wouldn't bother trying to find Craig Westerly, however, because he no longer works at any uni. He was let go several years ago. I doubt he even works in the field anymore. We'll handle it from here. I'll be in touch. Okay, so that was chapter 2. Um, Honestly, I'm kind of a slow reader. I'm sorry about that. Um, this kind of like this whole series is just to fuck around. I'm trying to get better at my public speaking, so you know, if it's trash, I apologize. My last video only has like 3 views and 1 like, so that nobody's gonna actually listen to this. If you're interested in this book, it's fucking great, but yeah. I'm going to be working on a couple of other projects as well, um, namely Artemis Fowl and Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Both kind of long books, but something I'm interested in, and it's a good book series. Um, so there's 24 chapters in this book, the Last Dog on Earth. Hopefully I'll be able to read like more chapters in one sitting. But these videos are turning out to be pretty long because I'm such a slow reader, so I apologize. I just figured it'd probably be easier to break it up into chapters instead of, having like groups. But I'll probably try next video to like add it into like 2 or 3 chapters per video. But I can't really, I don't know. So yeah, thank you for tuning in and have a great day, Iker.